Hey, Casual Console Gamer here, bringing you another review. Spider-Man Miles Morales. There's something that I've found since I started to review video games. I find it's easier to review a bad game than a good game. It's also much harder to talk about a well-made game that you enjoyed, but just didn't love, rather than a game that you had many problems with. That's exactly the situation that I found with Spider-Man Miles Morales. Here's my too long didn't watch. Miles Morales has a good story that's much too short for the price of the game. The gameplay is fun and engaging, although it is very similar to Spider-Man 1 on the PS4, with a few extras to set it apart. There's a lot of side content that can be done to earn new suits, gadgets, and upgrades, and swinging around New York City is just as fun in Miles Morales as it was in Spider-Man 1. It's a well-made, exceptional game that has very few flaws. It's just too bad that it does feel like a DLC they converted to a standalone game for the PlayStation 5's launch, rather than its very own video game. So is it worth buying in 2024, especially at the full price of $65 Canadian or $50 US? Absolutely not. Even though I enjoyed the story, and Miles Morales is a great character to play as, there just isn't enough content to make it worth paying more than $20 or $30 in my opinion, or getting a month of PlayStation Plus extra to check it out.
Hey, thanks.
No problem. Hey, you think you're gonna add that new Spider-Man too?
The kid? Yeah, maybe. Original's just my guy, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Spider-Man Miles Morales was released in November of 2020 on both the PlayStation 4 and it was a launch title of the PlayStation 5. Today in 2024, you can play it with a PlayStation Plus extra subscription or purchase it separately from the PlayStation Store for $65 Canadian, which is about $50 American. So is Miles Morales, a 4-year-old game, worth $50 in 2024, especially when you can get Spider-Man 2 for only $90 Canadian? That depends on how much you love the original Spider-Man game for PlayStation 4, because unfortunately, Miles Morales feels like a standalone DLC expansion than a full title. Sure, there are a few enhancements and new abilities, but the formula stays pretty much the same. And for a game that's going to take you about 8 or 9 hours to complete the story, and maybe another 10 or 15 hours to do all the side content, the price tag is a little steep for what you get. My advice is to play with a PlayStation Plus subscription, and I would rate the overall experience as an 8 out of 10.
What's this?
Christmas present. But first, you gotta take the oath.
Oh. Okay.
I promise to do everything in my power to protect this city.
I promise.
That's it.
The story is the best part of this game. You play as Miles Morales, a character that appeared in Spider-Man 1 on the PlayStation 4, and if it's been a while since you played that game and you're looking for a refresher, there's a quick recap at the beginning. Miles is a teenager that got bitten by a spider and is given superpowers. If that sounds familiar, that's because Peter Parker had the exact same experience a few years earlier. Miles Morales is the newest addition to the Spider-Man mantle, with New York City having 2 of the web-swinging heroes now. Peter Parker acts like a mentor to Miles, helping him balance his new superhero powers and his personal life. After a short fight at the start of the game where you battle criminals and the supervillain Rhino, Peter reveals that he's going on vacation for a few weeks, and he's leaving Miles as the city's only Spider-Man. It's big shoes to fill, and Miles has a different approach than Peter, along with a few different abilities. Spider-Man Miles Morales' main story is short, clocking in at only 8 or 9 hours, depending on how much of the side content you do. With Peter on vacation, Miles is left fighting a new group of villains that have taken over the Kingpin's criminal empire, using technology that can be shaped and molded into guns, swords, or even giant hammers. At this point, their technology is basically magic. Further muddying the waters is a corporation called Roxxon that has developed a new form of energy that the Underground, which are the main bad guys, are trying to stop. So that's the basic premise of the story, with Miles trying desperately to live up to the title of Spider-Man and doing as good as he can. Of course, he stumbles a few times, and he doubts he has what it takes. The story has some amazing set pieces, interesting characters, and pretty good villains. But to make a short story even shorter is the filler content. A little bit after you start the game, you're given a Spider-Man app that the city can use to report crimes and other side activities. If you're looking to mainline the story, the app does get in the way. After many of the main story missions, you will be forced to do side content until the main quest opens up again. It would be fine, but there are times where the story is going along with these world-ending stakes, and Miles is suddenly like, Maybe I should just check out the app for a little while and stop some break-ins rather than pursue the supervillain whose secret identity I just learned. It does seem kind of weird, especially when you get towards the end, when the stakes are really high and they're looking to blow up the entire city. It does take a bit of the wind out of the story's sails. That being said, the side content can be good. I never hated doing it. Stop a break-in and find out where they've taken the stolen goods, follow a set of pipes to a pumping station taken over by bad people, or maybe a group has disabled the emergency radios and there's a building that's burning for insurance money that you need to stop. It's just that I wish the option to focus strictly on the main storyline came first, and then you can clear the side content afterwards. Aside from that, the characters are great and memorable. The villains aren't exactly one-dimensional, aside from the stereotypical evil CEO who's only interested in profits and doesn't care if the city is destroyed, since they have a good insurance policy and they can rebuild it bigger and better than ever. The final thing I will say about the story, I think having to play the first Spider-Man game is essential. Sure, you can muddle your way through, especially with the recap at the beginning, but the story works better if you played the Spider-Man PS4 game first, since you're going to learn a lot more about Miles and can relate to it more.
Pete, are you okay? No.
Spider-Man Miles Morales has Miles web-swinging through New York, seamlessly traveling the length of the city. It's as enjoyable now as it was in Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. To make it even better, there are no loading screens in the entire game. When it was first released as a launch title for the PlayStation 4, its lack of loading screens was one of the talking points for reviews, showcasing the power of the PlayStation 5 and its solid-state hard drive that reduces load times. Is it perfect? Not if you're used to it. It's been 4 years since this game has been released, and it's not the only game that's had this ability to hide its loading screens. Once you learn the trick, you can spot them pretty easily. Miles will sometimes enter a short cutscene before an encounter, or when you're entering a new area. Do you remember the frequent cracks you would need to crawl in through in God of War or the Uncharted games? Or the hard to open doors? They're all designed to hide the loading screens. For Miles Morales, it's vents. Miles will enter most areas through a ventilation system, clinging to the walls in short sections that move slowly, before entering a building that's usually a combat encounter. It's never obnoxious or off-putting, it's just something you will notice if you're looking for it. But swinging across New York is still seamless, and the city is pretty detailed, especially compared to the PlayStation 4. There's loads of people walking down below, as well as trains and cars and vehicles and things like that. For having so much going on, there's never any graphical slowdowns, and the PlayStation 5 gives you multiple performance options to choose from. You can aim for a high 60 FPS, or maybe you want New York in all of its glory and you're willing to sacrifice a few FPS for the quality mode. Both options ran fine, and I settled on the higher graphics at the cost of some frame rate. Aside from traversing the city on webs, Miles Morales is primarily a combat game. Similar to the Batman Arkham games, Miles fights with a variety of gadgets to accompany his fists and webs. The enemy diversity really means that you need to use a lot of the tools in your tool belt to succeed. Miles has his webs that can bind or stick enemies to walls, a portable hologram that can make training dummies that can fight with you, a sticky electrical mine that shocks opponents, and even a gravity bomb that draws enemies into it. But your primary weapon is Miles and his physical combat. And he can be a powerhouse as long as you're observant to your spider sense. Just like Peter Parker, Miles can sense danger, and you're going to need to press the dodge button if an enemy is about to take a swing at him or locking onto him with a weapon. It can be a bit of a challenge when Miles is surrounded by enemies on all sides, with snipers up above. To make things more complicated, some enemies have shields or can block, requiring Miles to use an ability that Peter Parker lacks. Miles was bitten by a different spider than Peter, meaning he's a different kind of Spider-Man. Miles can use bioelectricity called Venom to shock his opponents or objects in the real world. And as you fight, you build up your special meter and you can unleash a powerful electric punch to stun enemies. This can be upgraded throughout the game, making it stronger and more versatile. Some enemies have shields that can only be damaged by Venom abilities, and you'll be using Venom a lot throughout the game. As you progress, you get the ability to do an area of attack with your Venom, as well as a dash that lets you cover ground quickly for those tricky, hard-to-catch sword-wielding enemies. Overall, combat is fun, engaging, and definitely challenging. But that's not all you're going to be doing. Just like Peter Parker and Batman, Miles can perch on the rooftops or high vantage points and scan his enemies. This will designate them as safe or dangerous, meaning you can safely take them out from above without being detected. Spider-Man Miles Morales isn't just a fighting and traversal game, it's a stealth one. Some combat encounters are going to be way too hard to tank, so you need to assess the area and whittle the enemy down. Miles can go from perch to perch and wrap up opponents on scene. There are entire combat encounters in this game that can be done without throwing a single punch if you time it right and are careful with your approach. If you are seen, Miles has another ability that Peter Parker lacks. Miles can camouflage, turning invisible for a short period of time. This lets you find a new vantage point to take enemies down, or you can just sneak up behind them for a quick knockout. Unlike Venom, camouflage refills over time, so you can easily sneak down, do your thing, and retreat over and over again if you're willing to wait. So the enemy variety is good, they come in a lot of different types, and the traversal is fun and engaging. The stealth is pretty good without being onerous. It's lacking those MJ missions from the first game, or a few stealth missions like in the early Assassin's Creed games. But there's something holding Miles Morales back in the gameplay piece. It's the boss fights. There aren't many at all. At the start of the game, without many spoilers, you're going to fight Rhino in this amazing chase scene, but afterwards, there's not a lot until the end of the game where you fight him again and then the final boss. There is one other boss fight that I don't want to spoil, but it's more of a wait until you're attacked and counter kind of fight, rather than a true boss battle. It's more of like fighting a tougher mob enemy. If there is something that made Miles Morales feel like DLC, it's the lack of a truly interesting boss encounter. The ones you do have aren't very interesting, with Miles either using spider sense to dodge and counter, or Venom to stun. To make matters more repetitive, a lot of the side content, combat encounters like crimes from the Spiderman app, are chase a car and stop it, or fight a small group of thugs, that kind of thing. They're all littered throughout the city, and you can use the app to highlight them for Miles to follow.
When I got powers, and I thought I'll be able to fix anything. Do anything that Spider-Man does.
Whenever you say Spider-Man, you always mean the other one. You're Spider-Man. You can fix this. Your way.
Let's talk about the voice acting and the music for a minute. Both are incredibly good. Miles, Peter Parker, and all the supporting cast are voiced by really talented voice actors, but the music is a standout. It's tied to a lot of the cutscenes, making it just as important as the voices. And with that brings us to the conclusion and the end of my review. Miles Morales is a very well-made game that is unfortunately a bit too short, with a lot of things copied from Spider-Man PS4. I would rate it an 8 out of 10, but I would not recommend that you pay more than $20 or $30 for it. Better yet, you can check it out on a PlayStation Plus Extra. Since it's only going to take you about 8 or 9 hours to beat, you can use the rest of your time to check out a couple other games on that service. There's a lot here if you're a fan of the series, but if you would rather hold onto your money for Spider-Man 2 instead, which is only about $30 more expensive, I don't think you're going to be missing out on anything essential for the sequel if you skip this one. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe for more content.